Project Blue Book was the name of the Air Force's official program for investigating unidentified flying objects. It came into being in 1951 as the successor to two other projects, the first of which had been launched 4 years earlier, after a number of people across the United States had reported seeing UFOs. During the years that followed, the Air Force received thousands of UFO reports. Their investigations found conventional explanations for most of them, but there were some sightings which the Air Force could not or did not explain. As a result, many people began to suspect that the government was not telling all that it knew, and there were accusations that they were deliberately censoring information which the public had a right to know.
Said to me, Dad, I got to ask the president about the aliens, you know, I was like,
cool.
Dude, no,
Yeah,
it's not cool. No,
it's cool.
It's not cool. It's embarrassing.
You have to take that opportunity. He knows.
No, you don't.
Yeah, because he's your son, so all you do is go, oh, I'm sorry.
I was like,
answer the question.
Jaden, do not ask the president. So we get into the situation room, and Jaden gets the look in his eyes, and he leans over, he says, Dad, what's my punishment? And I was like, Jaden, do not. So he looks, and, you know, Barack is talking about the situation room, and Jaden says, excuse me, Mr. President. And I was like, hey, Barack, man, hey, listen, Jaden. And Barack said, don't tell me. And in perfect form, like, this is why he's the president, he stopped and looked at Jaden and said, the aliens, right? And I was like, oh, shoot. And he said, okay, I can neither confirm nor deny the existence of extraterrestrials, but I can tell you, if there had been a top secret meeting, and if there would have had to have been a discussion about it, it would have taken place in this room.
Oh!
And Jaden was like,
That's big.
he's like, I told you, Dad, I told you it's aliens. I'm like, dude.
See, now he's going to watch Men in Black 3 and think it's a fly-on-the-wall documentary about his dad.
And is he still grounded then from that incident?
Yeah, no. He's got about 8 or 9 more months.
Okay.
You know, embarrassing me in front of the president.
But you should look into this. You got to find out.
Come on, man.
Do you want to find out?
Listen, here's the deal.
Aliens.
I know. I have the top secret information. I just can't share it. You don't think I've made all of these movies and not been briefed by the White House?
In spite of considerable harassment, professional pilots continue to come forward with their accounts of incredible encounters with UFOs. Inventor and author Dr. Richard Haynes is seen here working with his computerized research file of over 3,000 UFO sightings by commercial and military pilots. Because good eyesight and sharp abilities of observation are required to become a professional pilot, Dr. Haynes believes that the testimony of these credible witnesses cannot be ignored.
Well, if the accounts are to be believed, yes, there have been ET visitation, there have been crashed craft, there have been material and bodies recovered, and there is some group of people somewhere that may or may not be associated with government at this point, but certainly were at one time.
There is something out there that was close enough to be observed, and what could it be?
Traveling alongside Apollo 11 was a mysterious object like this one, filmed on a later mission. If it wasn't part of their own rocket, it could only be one thing: a UFO.
Mike decided he thought he could see it in the telescope, and he was able to do that. And when it was in one position, that it had a series of ellipses. But when you made it real sharp, it was sort of L-shaped. That didn't tell us very much.
NASA knew very little about the object reported by the Apollo 11 crew. It was obviously an unidentified flying object, but
the right stuff. But there is another side to Cooper's lifetime in aviation, one that for years he would only discuss with close friends, until now. It involves his personal encounters with UFOs. For him, it began in 1951 while flying in Europe for the U.S. Air Force. There, Cooper and other pilots witnessed an incident that has never been officially explained. A vast armada of UFOs flying in formation at extremely high altitudes. Recently, Yolanda Gaskin spoke with Gordon Cooper. In this exclusive interview, Colonel Cooper spoke for the first time on television about his encounters with UFOs.
I've read about this incident you had in 1951, and you said you saw literally hundreds of unidentifiable flying objects.
Yes, they were flying quite high. How high we couldn't tell because we couldn't get anywhere near their altitude. But they were either very large craft way up or smaller craft still well above what we could get to.
For a day and a half, all of this happened. But then no one wanted to talk about it.
Well, we sent a report forward on it, and the answer that finally came back months later was they were probably high-flying seed pods, which didn't sound very logical.
There are always a lot of excuses. There's always weather balloons. I've heard that one before. In 1951, you couldn't even get close to the things that were flying overhead. You or anyone else that was flying.
They were faster, higher.
Colonel Stevens spent 23 years on active duty in the United States Air Force as a pilot. He specialized in air technical intelligence and the design of advanced aircraft. He was a graduate of the Army Air Corps First Test Pilot School and at the age of 20 was a project officer on the P-47 fighter plane. During World War II, he flew in combat and was a test pilot. Colonel Stevens is still an active pilot. After World War II, he was assigned to an air base in Alaska where he debriefed B-29 crews who frequently described encounters with strange circular aircraft.
My first experience with a UFO report, personal experience that is, was when one of the crews returned and said that they saw a bogey, that's what they called them, up there that was moving at high speed at higher altitude than they could fly. And the crews later, I found out that they often referred to them as enemy aircraft or Russian aircraft, but usually bogies. And they tried to describe it, but it moved at faster speeds than anything we had. We didn't have jet airplanes then. Later we measured one that was flying 7,000 miles an hour, measured it on radar. So these clearly exceeded any of our capabilities in 1940s, any capabilities of anybody in the world in 1947.
Oh, yes, we discussed it at every conference that we had in the military. There's always things like that going on. Flying saucers and we've had other
analyzed between 1 and 2,000 reports that have come to us from all kinds of sources. Of this great mass of reports, we have been able adequately to explain the great bulk of them, explain them to our own satisfaction. However, there have been a certain percentage of this volume of reports that have been made by credible observers of relatively incredible things. It is this group of observations that we now are attempting to resolve.
Robert Kennedy was shot in that ballroom. We are free at last. A sniper has fired at President Kennedy. Or have you ever been a member of some old soldier? Never done. Something never before experienced. 1941, a date which will live in...
GFO. CQ, this is